what I would like to talk about today is, I would like to talk about innovation and R&D. And I would like to talk about that because to remain competitive in technologically advanced areas, governments, companies, research institutions, universities compete in this area. So a lot of money goes into research, R&D, development, innovation around the world. And the point I want to make today is that about two things. One, I believe that the subject matter we are all here for, cybersecurity, I think it's completely underinvested, seeing the money which goes into R&D in all the other fields. And the second piece is then that I believe that Europe, in particular, should reassess its success formula of how to successfully innovate in areas like automation, artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, and so on and so forth. And to give you a little flavor of what I'm talking about, I would like to give you some numbers. The global R&D spend is estimated, well, it depends on which research institute you look at, it ranges between 1.7 and 2 trillion US dollars, which is a hell lot of money. That's a lot of money. If you break it down, you have two countries actually covering more than half, which is the United States with above 500 billion, and China almost reaching 500 billion. I think China is probably the country with the fastest growth in R&D and innovation over the last 10 years. They catched up significantly. If you take the top 5 spenders, they all come from the United States. It's Microsoft, it's Alphabet, it's Apple, it's Amazon, and it's Facebook. They cover already 70 billion annual R&D spend. That's quite a lot, isn't it? Just 5 companies. So you see where the accumulation is. Germany is the only country in the European Union amongst the top 5 spenders in R&D in the world, with crossing roughly 100 billion. Europe itself counts for roughly 300 billion. So it's also worthwhile to look at the venture capital market. The venture capital market last year was covering 200 billion in investment. And the venture capital market is interesting to look at because there's a lot of new stuff going on, smaller companies, and things where there's a lot of hope that it takes off at some point of time. And if you take the 200 billion, only 2.5%, so 5 billion, is spent in cybersecurity. I think those companies are highly valued, and there's a lot of money going into it, but it's only 2.5% of the venture capital market. So if you take the entire money, where there's a lot of industries in, of course, then I believe that the security aspect in innovation still is very short to the overall amount. So taking that, looking at the money, that is one part of the equation. The second part of the equation is what actually is the success formula for making innovation happen so that you have successful product solution and so on and so forth. So if you look at the Chinese model, it's a very strong alignment between government and corporates and universities. And however we will see this from a security point of view, from a moral perspective, I think regardless of that, it is actually very successful how they do that. They have created a lot, haven't they? Look at the United States. Model is a little different. United States, very high risk and reward model. Always thinking big. It helps sometimes. Actually, they like big companies. They think it's something good when you have developed something very large. And always looking for expansion and domination. And I think if we combine those formulas, of course they are very shortcut now, then I think that Europe has no real path. We're still searching what the model is. And maybe that's the opportunity for us to formulate something where Europe actually can play a role. Because coming back to venture capital, from the 200 billion, 100 billion comes from the United States. In the meantime, 70 billion from China and 30 from the rest of the world. And amongst that is Europe. So we are underinvested. So are there points which can be done? I personally think looking for the big shot and for the moonshot, it's a modern word today, I think it's always a bit complicated. But maybe there are small things which can be done between corporates and governments. And I think the first point maybe is that from a government perspective and a corporate perspective, we can allow to reassess the model of how we cooperate. Because antitrust law is very strict in Europe, in particular in Germany. And does it really make sense that car makers all develop their autonomous drive system themselves? Right? I think cooperation can change a lot, in particular when it comes to digital platforms. It doesn't make sense that everybody develops an underutilized platform. The second thing is that if you look to the telecom industry, does it make sense to auction licenses for 5G, which is a critical infrastructure? Or wouldn't it be better to actually give an incentive or the license to them who commit to the biggest R&D spend thereafter? Because rolling it out costs money, but then where are the applications? Somebody has to do something as well. So maybe that model can be reassessed as well. So how things are being done. That's small steps, nothing big is required. You don't even have to change the law in some areas. So there might be opportunities for Europe to change the model, to change the cooperation between government and corporates, to at times also allow big players, because in some areas big players are good. It's not always bad to be big. And in that sense, I believe that it is good to have a strong and innovative United States or North America. And China will go its own way anyway. But that Europe plays a role, I think, is inevitable. We must have a strong continent with strong allies in Asia in order to develop things forward. And in that sense, I believe, also the security world and cybersecurity can step up, because it would automatically, with the European mindset, move a bit more up with regard to security. So I kept my promise to be short and precise. The message was that I believe that cybersecurity still is underinvested. We can do a bit more, and that Europe maybe refines its success formula for being more innovative to compete in the world space of technology. Thank you very much.